अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. We have been discussing Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, how he pays great attention on the quality of faith than reasoning. Faith in Sanskrit is a very significant term, Shraddha. Shraddhavan labate jnanam. One who is endowed with Shraddha, he becomes a recipient of knowledge. Well, Sri Ramakrishna prays to Divine Mother. Addressing her, he says, one needs faith. Faith is the foundation stone for spiritual life. Last two classes, I think, we have discussed in great detail about reasoning, how it leads nowhere. Today also I will deal with that subject little more and then switch on to the teaching of Vedanta. The theology of reason is based on doubt. The doubting mind is a victim of cynicism that scoffs at things and phenomena that it doesn't understand. Such a mind doubts the validity of the scriptures, but believes in the infallibility of a newspaper report. That is authentic to such a man. The man of such temperament is skeptical about the holiness of a saint, but is prone to accept the meanness of the evil-minded. The person who is guided by reason is forced by his own intellectual rigidity to live in a universe filled with concepts and categories that constantly challenge his basic philosophy of life and make him feel most insecure and unhappy. Because of his compulsion to reason, he can't accept that which is easily acceptable, and is haunted by a passion for doubting. One who lives only by reason is guided by the philosophy of necessity and utility. He must have a reason for everything he does, for everything he says, and for everything he thinks. Everything must be supported by reasoning. That means he is completely under the grip of his doubting intellect. The doubting intellect dominates him in everything. All his feelings, all his actions, all his perceptions and volitions, they are all dictated by reason. That means he is like a machine, automatic and meticulous in every respect, but devoid of the sense of value. As a result, he becomes possessed by a sense of determinism that makes even the trivialities of his life appear unduly significant. Such determinism cripples every moment of life because he is looking for an explanation and justification for everything. The man of reason lives in the future because his present is made up of uncertainties and probabilities. His doubts and determinism follow from his inner devaluation, and his devalued personality is always pessimistic, projecting its pessimism on everything. In the realm of religion, when reason becomes the sole pathfinder, everything becomes dark and dry because the intellect becomes the victim of its own reasoning. It creates problems which it cannot solve. It raises questions which it cannot answer. That which is infinite cannot be grasped by the finite mind. All our finite perceptions of truth and reality are not exhaustive but suggestive. Spiritual truth, as a matter of fact, can only be felt and never defined and measured. Feeling is seeing and not seeking. Seeing is subjective experience, not descriptive fact. Seeking separates the subject from the object, while seeing brings them together and finally merges them into one. That means seeing requires total commitment of the whole personality to the object of faith. Suppose you believe in Vedanta, you are totally committed to that. That total commitment is very essential to experience the reality. It's a form of revelation. One of the devotees, his name Pratap, he was puzzled, got confused. So he asked Sri Ramakrishna, shouldn't we reason any more than? Reasoning has no place in the life at all. Is that what you mean? Sri Ramakrishna clarified him. No, I don't mean that way. He said, I am asking you not to indulge in futile reasoning, but reason by all means about the real and the unreal, about what is permanent and what is transitory. You have to reason. It is very essential. You must reason when you are overcome by lust. You must reason thoroughly when you are overcome by anger or grief. Reasoning has its place. But you must know when to apply, where to apply. That's the point. Pandit Shashidhar, of course, with whom Sri Ramakrishna was talking, giving instructions to him in great detail. He was so much impressed by Shashidhar, he wanted to transform his life. Actually, he did so. He transformed a person who had so much of knowledge about the scriptures, but had not experienced the content of those scriptures. So Sri Ramakrishna specifically gave instructions to him to step into practice. Stop talking anymore. There is no need for lecturing anymore. Step into practice now. Develop love and devotion to God. Turn totally that way before your life goes, get the fulfillment. And Sri Ramakrishna was so gracious. He poured out his grace upon him. He was so much impressed by that personality, seeing his sincerity, seeing his tremendous hankering for the knowledge of the reality. So Shashidhar immediately understood what Sri Ramakrishna meant when he said, it's good to reason about what is real, what is unreal, what is permanent and what is transitory. Pandit Shashidhar, a great scholar he was, he appreciated every bit of what Sri Ramakrishna said, and he said, it is called reasoning based on discrimination. It has got a specific term. In Vedanta, we call it as vichar. Vichar is very good. Vichar, that means discrimination. Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, discrimination between the real and the unreal. Now herein comes the importance of Vedanta. How Vedanta looks at it. Sri Ramakrishna has given the hint how to apply reason in our spiritual life. What is the relationship between the reasoning and faith? Vedanta harmonizes both faith and reason in the background of realization. The contention of Vedanta is that the validity of truth depends neither on faith nor on reason, but on its realization in life. Realization of truth proceeds from an inner maturity or evolution which begins with the dawning of faith. Faith is essential quality to begin with. Faith matures into conviction through reasoning and discrimination. Intellectual conviction about truth inspires the mind towards uninterrupted concentration, and this concentration culminates in the final revelation of truth. Concentration. Everybody wants to concentrate, but they cannot do because of so many drawbacks in the mind. Vedanta accepts both reason and faith as instruments for the realization of the ultimate spiritual goal. There cannot be genuine faith without reasoning and discrimination. On the other hand, one cannot discriminate truth from untruth unless one has implicit faith in the truth. See how both are important. Neither faith nor reason singly can give any finality to the real nature of truth. The realization of truth is possible only through the cooperation of both faith and reasoning. The testimony of faith without the foundation of inner conviction is mere conjecture, while the conclusions of reason unsuppressed, unsupported by personal experience, only indicate that which is not truth, since the ultimate reality and incorporeal defies all attempts of the finite human mind to define and know it. The Upanishads, they indicate the ultimate reality as the imperishable absolute. The eye of our eye, the ear of our ear, the very ground of our being, which cannot be grasped by the discursive intellect or described by words. All our attempts to describe the ultimate end in profound silence. Sri Ramakrishna once tried to explain, to disclose how that final experience of realization would be. But when he was about to explain that higher state, he couldn't do that because he went into ecstatic state. He went beyond this plane of consciousness. He could not do. Then he came down, again he wanted to describe, again he tried. he couldn't do. That means it cannot be described, it's only to be experienced by oneself. He who knows he knows nothing, because nobody knows the knower. The vision of the ultimate varies from individual to individual, depending on the spiritual seeker's disposition of mind. Our realizations of the ultimate indicate how it appears to us and not what it really is in itself. Each one's experience is different. These realizations have been described by the various religious systems as communion with God, union with Him. Some people call it samadhi, some people call it nirvana, and so forth. How Vedanta looks at them, it considers them to be like different photographs of a cathedral or temple taken from different angles of vision. Each is true and unique, but never complete. Now, Vedanta mentions 3 types of reasoning. One is called Vada. The second one is called Jalpa. Third one is called Vittanda. This all very nicely dealt with. Vada is academic reasoning. Its goal is to discover truth without having a bias for or against the hypothesis. This type of reasoning seeks to establish the fact by highlighting the merits of such a hypothesis. That's called Vada. There is another type of reasoning called Jalpa, in which the main purpose is to defeat the arguments of the opponent by any means, rational or irrational. That means it is reasoning in a dogmatic and negative way. The third variety of reasoning is called Vittanda. It seeks only to lay bare the defects of the opponent's contentions without trying to suggest an alternative hypothesis. The Vittanda type of reasoning may also take the form of chal. There's another word called chal in Sanskrit, which is a rejoinder that seeks to willfully misinterpret the arguments of the opponent, or nigraha, the purpose of which is to give arguments in such a way that they will not be understood by the opponent even though repeated several times. This type of reasoning Vedanta doesn't accept. This type of reasoning is not helpful for the spiritual aspirant. This type of reasoning ends up only in confusion, ends up in mess. He can never hope to get any kind of peace in this way of reasoning. Reasoning in Vedanta is not arguing. Neither it is reasoning with any bias or for or against the hypothesis. Reasoning in Vedanta is specifically termed as vichar. Vichara. That's what exactly Sri Ramakrishna meant. Vichara, a process of rational discrimination between real and unreal. That is very much appreciated. We must have vichara. Absolute reality is affirmed by negating all that is relative. The contention of Vedanta is that an average mind is subject to habitual doubts, preconceived ideas, and personal sentiments. Unless guarded by reason, it can easily lapse into inertia and delusion. So there is no way of dispelling these prejudices of the mind except through reasoning. So, we should understand what type of reasoning we are initiating in our thinking process. That's very important when you are practicing spiritual life. Sri Ramakrishna stresses upon using the faculty of reasoning to discard whatever that is unreal, whatever that is non-essential. Reasoning must be applied to practice renunciation. What is it that causes suffering? So, once you know the cause of suffering, try to remove the roots of those suffering. Then you are on the spiritual path in a proper way. So reasoning as such is not refused, but reasoning should be properly applied, properly understood. That's what Sri Ramakrishna meant. So, let us try to have tremendous Shraddha, love and devotion and dedication towards the reality, towards the truth which we are trying to experience in the life. That firm belief is important to go onward in our spiritual path. So with these words I conclude my talk, then I shall read some passage of the Gospel. Page 506. Master M remained speechless with wonder for a few moments and then said, "Oh, now I understand. As you say, the important thing is to climb to the roof. Our goal will be achieved if we can accomplish it by following any of the means, a rope or a pole." Master replied, "It is through the grace of God that you have understood that. Without His grace, doubt is never cleared up." Another important point Sri Ramakrishna is bringing in now. Grace. The important thing is somehow to cultivate devotion to God and love for Him. What's the use of knowing many things? It's enough to cultivate love of God by following any of the paths. When you have this love, you are sure to attain God. Afterwards, if it is necessary, God will explain everything to you and tell you about the other paths as well. It's enough for you to develop love of God. You have no need of many opinions and discussions. You have come to the orchard to eat mangoes. Enjoy them to your heart's content. You don't need to count the branches and leaves on the trees. It's wise to follow the attitude of Hanuman. He said, I don't know the day of the week, the phase of the moon, or the position of the stars. I only contemplate Rama. Master Maharshi said, I now desire that my activities may be much reduced and that I may devote myself greatly to God. Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, certainly your desire will be fulfilled. But a jnani can live unattached in the world. Master Maharshi said, true sir, but one needs a special power to lead an unattached life. Master said, that's also true. But perhaps you wanted the worldly life. Krishna had been enshrined in Radha's heart, but Radha wanted to sport with him in human form. Hence all the episodes of Vrindavan. Now you should pray to God that your worldly duties may be reduced and you will achieve the goal if you renounce mentally. Here Sri Ramakrishna is suggesting him how renunciation leads to realization. Master Maharshi said, but mental renunciation is prescribed for those who cannot give up the world outwardly. For superior devotees, total renunciation is enjoined, both outer and inner. Sri Ramakrishna was silent a few minutes and then resumed the conversation. Master said, how did you like what I said about renunciation a little while ago? Yam answered, very much, sir. Master said, tell me, what's the meaning of renunciation? Yam said, renunciation does not mean simply dispassion for the world. It means dispassion for the world and also longing for God. Sri Ramakrishna said, you are right. You no doubt need money for your worldly life, but don't worry too much about it. The wise course is to accept what comes of its own accord. Don't take too much trouble to save money. Those who surrender their hearts and souls to God, those who are devoted to Him and have taken refuge in Him, do not worry much about money. As they earn, so they spend. The money comes in one way and goes out the other. This is what the Gita describes as accepting what comes of its own accord. The master referred to Haripada and said, he came here the other day. Master Maharshi said, he knows how to sing the stories of the Purana. He sings melodiously about the life of Prahlad and the nativity of Sri Krishna. Master said, is that so? That day I looked into his eyes. They had an inward look. I asked him whether he meditated a great deal, but he sat with his eyes cast down and didn't answer. Then I said to him, look here, don't strain yourself too much. It was now dusk. Sri Ramakrishna, as was usual with him during this part of the day, chanted the names of God and turned his mind to contemplation. Soon the moon rose in the sky. The temples, courtyards and trees were bathed in its silvery light, and millions of broken moons played on the rippling surface of the Ganges. Rakhal and M were with the master in his room. Master said to him, Baburam says, oh, the worldly life, God forbid. Master Maharaj said, his opinion is based on mere hearsay. What does he know of the world? He is a mere child. Master, yes, that is true. Have you noticed Niranjan? He is utterly artless. Yam said, yes, sir. His very appearance attracts people. How expressive his eyes are. Master said, not only his eyes, but his entire person. His relatives proposed that he marry. At this he said, why are you going to drown me? With a smile. Tell me this. People say that a man finds great pleasure in the company of his wife after the hard work of the day. Yam said, that's no doubt true of those who think that way. To Rakhal with a smile, we are now being examined. This is a leading question. Both Rakhal and Yam were married. Master said with a smile, a mother says, I shall have a sigh of relief if I can procure a shade tree for my son. He will rest in its shade when scorched by the heat of the world. We shall stop here. Yes. Now your session will begin. Any questions to ask? Reasoning by itself will not lead you anywhere. That's the substance of what all I said in my last classes and today. It has got its limited purpose. As Vedanta says, which are rational reasoning. That is required. Not simply arguing. Anyway, all the varieties of what is ordinarily understood by reasoning, I have explained today in brief today. So, spiritual realization is possible only when you are intensely practical and engage yourself totally in the spiritual activities. All the time being watchful about how the mind behaves. That's important.